You're listening to Daily Prayer Stories, Cinematic Journeys of Faith, where everyday struggles meet eternal hope. Daily Prayer Stories presents Season 4, The Story of Grace. Part 4, The Return of the Storm. Freedom is a gift, but some days it feels like something you have to hold with both hands. The wind came hard off the plains, rattling the loose sign over the hardware store and whining through the alley like a warning. By late afternoon, the sky had turned the color of wet slate, and the temperature dropped fast enough to make breath look like smoke. Grace stood at the sink in her little upstairs apartment, washing the same coffee mug she'd already washed twice, listening to the window pane click against its frame. She'd slept, but not deep. Seeing her dad had stirred more than memories. It had stirred the parts of her heart that tried to renegotiate with the past. Forgiveness was real, yes, but so was the ache that followed it. Like a muscle waking up after being still too long, she dried the mug, set it by the stove, and reached for her phone. A text blinked from an unknown number. Heard you're back. Need a ride? Or a drink? Her stomach tightened. Jason had changed his number again. The message felt casual, but the old undertow tugged immediately. You owe him a conversation. You can fix this. You can keep the peace. She set the phone face down, pressed her palms to the counter, and breathed. The church bell down the block rang 4 slow times. Grace pulled on her coat and headed for the stairs. Pastor John had asked if she could swing by to help sort pantry donations. The cold snap was stretching folks thin, and more families than usual had asked for help. Work that kept her hands moving usually kept her mind from spiraling. Usually the church hallway smelled like dust and coffee. Volunteers shuffled canned goods across folding tables. Green beans, soup, peanut butter. Formula. Mrs. Webb, from the choir, wrote dates on labels with a purple Sharpie while her husband stacked boxes on a dolly that squeaked every third step. Hey there. Kiddo, Pastor John called from the fellowship hall. Sleeves rolled to his forearms. You okay to tackle the cereal mountain? Grace smiled. Point me to the flakes. They worked in an easy rhythm, a quiet sift and stack punctuated by small talk and the clack of tape guns. At one point, a young mom came in with a toddler on her hip and a baby zipped inside her coat. Pastor John handed her a bag and added diapers with a soft, no charge. The woman's eyes filled. She mouthed, "Thank you," and Grace had to blink fast at her own vision. This, she thought, is what I want my life to be for. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. She ignored it. Another buzz. Then a third. Pastor John glanced over, reading her face the way only old pastors can. Storm finding its way inside? He asked quietly. She exhaled. Jason, new number. New promises, probably. He nodded once, not prying. You know where the sanctuary is? She did. She wiped her hands, slipped out of the fellowship hall, and walked into the sanctuary's blue hush. Colored light from the stained glass fell across the aisle like the memory of summer. She slid into the third pew and let the quiet do its work. After a moment, she whispered, Lord, I don't want to pick up what you told me to lay down. Her hand went to the pocket where her phone kept humming. Help! She opened the Bible that lived in the rack, pages already soft from 1,000 hands. Her eyes landed where they needed to. There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Verse 13, King James Version. She read it out loud, slow, letting the cadence settle her breathing. A way to escape, not a door that kicks itself open. A way often small, often unflashy out of the place that used to swallow her whole. Her phone buzzed again. She pulled it out and read, I'm outside the diner. Thought maybe we could talk. She closed her eyes. Old reflexes reached for her guilt dressed as responsibility, fear dressed as kindness. She saw herself at 25, standing in a cold parking lot, agreeing to one more conversation that turned into one more year. No, not today, that she typed. Hand steady. I'm not meeting. I wish you well. Do not contact me again. Then she blocked the number. Her thumb hovered, then tapped delete thread. It wasn't heroic. It was obedience. She stayed in the pew a few more minutes, repeating the verse like steps on a staircase. When she stood, her chest felt lighter, not because the wind had died down, but because she wasn't walking into it alone. Back in the fellowship hall, Pastor John was taping a box that wouldn't behave. How'd the sanctuary treat you? Yes, like he was asking how the weather was in a different state. Like it always does, Grace said. Brought the world back to size. He grinned. Good place to remember, we're not God. They finished the pantry work and locked up. As Grace stepped onto the church steps, sleet ticked against her hood. The streetlights wore halos. She shoved her hands in her pockets and started for home. Halfway down Maple, a car idled at the curb near the diner, exhaust ghosting in the wind. Her body knew the make before her mind admitted it. Jason's old Civic, the passenger mirror held on with duct tape. The driver's window slid down. His face flashed in the streetlight thinner, maybe older. She kept walking. Grace, he called, not loud enough to draw attention, but loud enough that she heard her name the way you hear it in dreams. She didn't stop. He tried again. Just wanted to say I'm proud of you. That's all. She reached the corner and turned without looking back. The wind took the rest of whatever he said at the base of the stairs to her apartment. She paused. Her heart pounded not with panic this time, but with the adrenaline that comes after you do the right thing and your body hasn't caught up yet. She leaned against the railing and let the sleep pepper her coat. Thank you, she said into the dark. For the way of escape? For the courage to take it. Upstairs, the radiator clicked on in reluctant bursts. She microwaved a bowl of leftover soup and ate it standing at the counter. When she finished, she washed the bowl, dried it, and set it beside the Survivor cup. Small order restored. Her phone lit with a new message from an unsaved number, but a different one. Grace, this is Danielle from HR at Bricker Printing. Your application for the front desk position looks solid. Are you available to interview tomorrow at 10? She laughed, one sharp breath that turned into something like praise. She texted back, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Then she put both hands flat on the counter and whispered the verse that had knitted itself to her bones. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, King James Version. Stand fast, she echoed. Stand fast? She set an alarm, laid out the least wrinkled blouse she owned, and slid her resume into a manila folder that had seen better days. On the knitstand, she placed her Bible open to Psalm 139 and traced a line with her finger, letting the words wrap around her like the blanket she would soon pull up to her chin. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. Psalm chapter 139, verse 3, King James Version. Acquainted, not surprised by her. Not disappointed into distance. Acquainted like a father who knows when the storm has returned before his child does. She climbed into bed. The sleet softened to rain and to a steady hush. The last thought she had before sleep found her was not about Jason's car at the curb. It was about a lobby she hadn't entered yet, a handshake she hadn't offered, a life that was being rebuilt brick by a carpenter who didn't rush. Part 5, the interview. Sometimes, God's favor doesn't arrive in miracles. It walks into the room wearing kindness and coffee stains. The morning light was sharp and pale over downtown. Grace walked quickly, boots clicking against the sidewalk, her resume folder tucked under one arm, and a travel mug of lukewarm coffee in her hand. She'd barely slept, but her heart felt steady, like something solid had started to rebuild beneath her feet. She'd printed the resume at the library that morning, praying over every bullet point. The job wasn't glamorous, front desk at a small printing company, but it was stable, local, close enough to the church that she could walk. After months of trying to patch her life together, stability sounded like mercy dot as she turned the corner. A gust of wind caught her hair, pushing it into her face. She laughed softly. "Okay, Lord," she whispered. "Let's try this again." The Bricker printing sign hung above a glass door with a tiny bell. Inside, the air smelled like toner and warm paper. A middle-aged woman at the counter smiled when Grace entered. "Hi there. You must be Grace." "That's me," she said, smiling back. "Danielle?" The woman nodded. "Come on in. The boss is running a few minutes behind. Coffee?" Grace hesitated. "If it's not too much trouble." "Trouble?" Danielle chuckled. "Honey, caffeine is ministry in this place." Grace laughed. The sound felt good, almost foreign. She took the paper cup, warming her hands, when the door opened behind her. She turned to see a tall man in his late 50s, sleeves rolled, tie slightly crooked, carrying a box of business cards. "You must be Grace," he said. "I'm Tom Bricker." "Yes, sir." "Please, Tom," he said, setting the box down. "Sir makes me feel like my father." She smiled nervously and followed him into the small office at the back. The walls were lined with framed posters of local events, church picnics, high school concerts, small town fairs. The hum of printers filled the background like white noise. Tom gestured for her to sit. "So tell me what brought you here." The question caught her. Not "what are your qualifications?" or "what's your experience?" but "what brought you here?" She hesitated. "Well, life," she said finally. "And maybe Grace?" "Both kinds." He smiled, glancing up from her resume. "That's a good answer." They talked for 20 minutes about office software, customers, the small chaos of keeping paper orders straight. Nothing complicated. But under every question was something deeper. Like he was trying to see if she could be trusted, not just hired Dot at one point. She fumbled with her words and laughed nervously. "Sorry, I haven't done an interview in a while." Tom leaned back, hands folded. "You doing fine? I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for someone who shows up." The sentence settled into her like a verse. Someone who shows up. He asked one final question. "If a customer calls upset, how do you handle it?" Grace smiled. "Depends on the kind of upset. If it's about a mistake, I'd listen, apologize, fix it, and offer coffee on the house. If it's about life," she paused, "I'd still listen. Most of the time, people just want to know they've been heard." Tom studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You'll fit right in." Her breath caught. "Does that mean?" "You start Monday," he said simply. Grace blinked. "Really?" "Really," he said, standing. "It's not luck, Grace. Sometimes doors open because it's just time." She shook his hand, her smile trembling. "Thank you." When she stepped outside, the cold air hit her face, but her chest felt warm. She leaned against the railing, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Thank you, God, for the door." Then, almost without thinking, she added, "And for teaching me how to walk through it this time." That evening, she stopped by the church to tell Pastor John. He was in the sanctuary, tuning an old guitar left over from youth group. "I got the job," she said, trying not to cry. He grinned. "Of course you did. You've been faithful with a little." "I still don't feel qualified." "Good," he said. Neither did Moses. They both laughed. After he left, Grace stayed behind for a while. The lights were dim, the pews empty. She walked slowly down the aisle, whispering her gratitude like a prayer between heartbeats. She knelt at the front pew, hands resting on the wood, and opened her Bible to the verse that had carried her through the week. "But my God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus." Philippians chapter 4, verse 19, King James Version. She traced the words with her finger and let them sink in. "I used to think you'd forgotten me," she whispered. "Turns out you were just waiting until I stopped running." Outside, snow had started again, soft, slow flakes settling on the church steps. She pulled on her coat and stepped into the night. The air was cold, but it didn't sting the way it used to Dot at the corner. The diner's neon sign flickered again. Still tired, still half lit. But tonight it made her smile, because she wasn't half lit anymore. She was whole enough to begin again. Part 6. The storm inside the calm. Peace isn't the absence of storms. It's learning not to drown when they come back. The week passed quietly, the kind of calm that feels borrowed. Grace settled into her new job at Bricker Printing, learning how to balance invoices, greet customers, and make copies without jamming the machine. Her coworkers were kind, the coffee always a little burnt, and the radio played old gospel songs between commercials. For the first time in years, she didn't wake up to panic. But peace, she'd learned, isn't silence, it's what survives after the noise comes back. Friday night, she stayed late at the office, finishing a stack of invoices. The sky outside had already turned black, snow swirling against the windows. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. She shut down the computer and slipped on her coat. Her phone buzzed on the desk. One new message. She smiled, expecting it to be Pastor John or Danielle, but when she opened it, her stomach dropped. Grace, it's your father. They took me to the hospital tonight. Don't panic, just short of breath. Room 204. If you can come, I'd like that. The words blurred. She grabbed her bag and keys, locking the office without turning off the light. At the hospital, the smell of disinfectant hit her first. Monitors beeped softly down the hallway. She found room 204 and paused outside the door, steadying her breath. Her father looked smaller than before, propped up in bed, oxygen line across his nose. When he saw her, his face lit up. Grace. She forced a smile. Hey, Dad. They said it's nothing serious, he said quickly. Just lungs acting up again. Still smoking? He smiled sheepishly, trying not to. She sat in the chair beside him, her hands clasped in her lap. The TV murmured in the background, some late night weather report predicting another storm. They talked about simple things, her new job. The town's Christmas lights, the pastor's terrible singing voice. But underneath, both knew there was more to say. After a while, he reached for her hand. His skin felt thin, paper dry. I'm proud of you, you know? Grace blinked fast. For what? For staying when it's easier to run. She laughed softly. You mean like somebody I know? He smiled. Yeah, like that. They sat in comfortable silence until the nurse came in to check his vitals. Grace stood to leave, squeezing his hand. I'll be back tomorrow, she said. Bring coffee, he said. The real kind, not this hospital water. She laughed. Deal. Outside, the air had turned colder. Snow fell harder, the kind that sticks to your eyelashes. Grace started her car and sat for a moment, watching her breath fog the glass. Peace? That's what this was. Fragile peace, yes, but real. She turned on the heater, the radio whispering an old hymn through static. When peace like a river attendeth my way. Her mother's song? It is well with my soul. Grace smiled through tears. You just won't let me forget, will you? She whispered to God. Halfway home, her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. Driving on icy roads demanded both hands. But when she reached her apartment and checked, her heart sank. Grace, it's Pastor John. Call me when you get this. It's about your father? She froze. Her fingers trembled as she hit call back. He answered immediately. Grace, honey, I'm so sorry. He had a heart episode about 20 minutes after you left. They're doing everything they can. Her knees gave out. She sank to the floor, tears streaming. Izzy, she tried, but couldn't finish. They haven't called it yet, he said gently. But you should get here. She was already grabbing her coat. Back at the hospital, the hallway seemed longer this time. Room 204's door was open, nurses moving quickly inside. A doctor spoke quietly to Pastor John. Grace stopped in the doorway. The room was too quiet. Her father lay still. The machines had stopped beeping. The doctor turned to her, his face heavy. I'm sorry. It was sudden. Her body felt hollow. She stepped closer, touched her father's hand, still warm, but fading. You said we'd have coffee tomorrow? She whispered. Pastor John put a hand on her shoulder. He knew you forgave him, Grace. That's what mattered most. She nodded slowly, unable to speak. Her tears fell onto the blanket. Then I guess it's well with his soul now. Later, sitting alone in the chapel downstairs, she stared at the small cross above the altar. The light was dim, the silence deep. Why, God? She whispered. Why bring him back just to take him? The silence didn't answer. But somewhere deep inside, a verse rose, one she'd heard at every funeral she'd ever attended, but never needed until now. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Psalm chapter 34, verse 18, King James Version. She said it aloud, her voice shaking. You're close to the broken-hearted. The words echoed softly, filling the empty room. Then stay close, she whispered, because I don't know how to breathe without you. When she finally stood to leave, she felt lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because it had somewhere to rest. Outside, snow blanketed the parking lot. Her car was covered, but she didn't rush. She tilted her head back, letting the snowflakes melt on her face. They tasted like grace. Cold, pure, undeserved grace. Part 7, the morning after. Grief doesn't check the clock, but mercy still shows up on schedule. The first sound was the radiator ticking to life, then the wind nudging the loose window pane. Grace opened her eyes to a room still blue with dawn and remembered before she moved. Hospital light. A still hand. The doctor's quiet voice. The ache arrived like it had been waiting by the bed. She lay there a while staring at the ceiling, palms flat against the blanket, as if pressing herself into the day could make it hold her. On the knitstand, her phone face down, her Bible open where she'd left it. She turned the phone over 3 messages. One from Pastor John. I'm here when you're ready. One from Danielle. Call me, don't worry about work today. And one she hadn't expected. From Tom Bricker, take as much time as you need. We're praying for you, she breathed out slowly. The kindness hurt in the best way. Dot in the kitchen. She filled the kettle and set it on the burner. The apartment felt different, a little too quiet, a little too clean. She pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet out of habit, set them both on the counter, and didn't put the second one away. The water began to rattle. She poured it over grounds in the little pour-over cone and watched the dark bloom rise. You asked for the real kind, she said into the room, voice catching. I brought it anyway. She carried a mug to the table and sat where the light could find her. The air smelled like coffee and cold. She slid her Bible closer, not like a lifeline, exactly, more like the handrail on a staircase you didn't know you needed until your knee gave out. The ribbon marked Lamentations, a passage her mother used to read in hard seasons. She read it aloud, quietly, to the cup and the empty chair. It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Lamentations chapter 3. Verses 22-23, King James Version. New every morning, she repeated. The words heavier than porcelain and lighter than breath. Then let there be some new for me today. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unfamiliar number. This is Nurse. Carla from St. Luke's. Your dad asked me last night to remind you about the coffee. He said, tell her I'm proud of her whether I taste it or not. I'm so sorry for your loss. Grace pressed her palm to her mouth and laughed through tears. You would, she said, shaking her head. Right to the end? She stood, wiped her face with the heel of her hand, and began to move. Dishes rinsed. A small loaf of bread sliced. Butter in the pan until it hissed. She scrambled eggs and burned the first toast a little, because grief makes you forget the settings. She made a plate and set it across from her own. She didn't talk to the plate. She gave thanks, not because she felt holy, but because gratitude let her keep breathing. Thank you, God, for the years we didn't get and for the mercy of the ones we did. Thank you for a father who was lost and was found. Thank you that death doesn't get the last word. The front hallway creaked. Footsteps climbed the stairs 2 at a time. A soft knock. Grace opened the door to Pastor John, hat in his hands, winter air clinging to his coat. Wrong address for the coffee? She tried. I heard there was real coffee here, he said with a smile that didn't hide the sadness in his eyes. He saw the second mug and the extra plate. Good. Let the table be crowded even when it isn't. I sat a while without rushing words. He told a story about her dad stealing donuts from the fellowship table at Easter and getting caught by a 5-year-old who demanded a tithe. Grace told him about the way her dad used to whistle when he didn't know the tune. They both laughed like people who knew laughter was not a betrayal. When the quiet returned, Pastor John opened his Bible and set it between them. I have 2 verses, he said. You choose? She nodded. He read the first. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Psalm chapter 23. Verse 4, King James Version. And the second, he said, turning pages with fingers that knew the path, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 16 to 18, King James Version. Grace closed her eyes. Both, she said. The valley for this morning. The promise for all the rest. He nodded. That's good theology. They prayed that kind of prayer with more silence than sentences. When he left, he squeezed her shoulder. We'll handle arrangements together, he said. The church covers what the church can cover. Let us. Thank you, she said, meaning it deeper than the words could carry. After he left, the apartment felt bigger again. The second mug had cooled, a skim of oil glistening on the top. She washed it carefully like it was fine china and set it on the rack to dry. She tucked the hospital nurse's text into a note on her phone, then wrote a sentence on a sticky note and pressed it to the fridge. Right above the grocery list. Great is thy faithfulness today, counts. Her phone rang. Danielle, don't you dare think about work, Danielle said as soon as Grace answered. Tom says take the week. We'll load you up with casseroles if you fight us. Grace smiled. I might fight you over the casseroles. Good, Danielle said. I make a mean lasagna and an awful sympathy joke. You get both. By late morning, Grace pulled on her coat and stepped into air that had warmed from sharp to honest cold. She walked to the funeral home the way you walk to things you can't avoid slow, steady, with a verse under your breath so the sidewalk doesn't swallow you whole. The director was kind. Paperwork found signatures without snarling. Choices were simpler than she feared because her father had left a note. Keep it simple. Sing it as well. Back outside, she sat on a bench by the library, watching a boy in a red coat chase a dog that refused to be caught. Life refused to be paused. Okay, she said to the sky. Okay, double quotes, her phone buzzed. Caleb, she answered. I heard, he said, voice already rough. I'm driving in. Bring stories, she said. He left some space for them. Caleb sniffed. He always did. On her way home, she stopped at the church. The sanctuary was empty, but for a custodian sweeping salt from the entry. Grace slid into the third pew and let the warmth of the room hold her. She didn't ask why. She had last night. Today she asked how. How do I do the next hour? She whispered. How do I stand up there and sing his song without breaking? The answer didn't come as language. It came as a memory, her mother's hands kneading bread, flour rising like dust motes in sun. Her father's whistle from another room, the tune wrong but the joy right. Providence braided through ordinary mornings. Strength braided through small obediences. Maybe she didn't need enough for Sunday. Maybe she only needed enough for noon dot. She opened her Bible to a line she'd underlined years ago, when she thought it was for other people. It turned out it was for mornings like this. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 25, King James Version. As my day, she said, testing it like a step, so shall my strength be. She stood and walked to the piano. The lid creaked. The bench wobbled a little. She didn't mind. She placed her fingers on the keys and played the opening progression the way her mother had. Too slow at first, then right-sized. Her voice joined in barely above a whisper. When peace like a river attendeth my way. The second verse came easier. Tears blurred the notes, but her hands found their way home. It is well. It is well with my soul. She stopped, let the last chord fade into wood and carpet. That's all I have, she said to the empty room. But it's yours? Back at the apartment, a brown paper bag sat by her door, Mrs. Yenton across it in heavy cursive. Inside, a casserole, a loaf of bread, and a card with a verse in shaky ink. He healeth the broken in heart, and bindeth up their wounds. Psalm chapter 147. Verse 3, King James Version. Grace pressed the card to her chest. You're very consistent, she told God. Please don't stop. As afternoon bent toward evening, she made a simple dinner and set two places again, not as denial, but as discipline. This table won't scare me, she said. She ate slowly, tasting each bite like a lesson. Before bed, she put the program notes in a folder, texted Danielle back with a heart, then set her alarm. Then she took a sticky note and added it beside the first. New mercies are not. Imaginary Lamentations 3:22-23. She turned out the light. The room thinned to shadow. The ache remained, but so did the presence that had followed her into the hospital. The chapel, the kitchen, the pew, and this bed. She pulled the blanket to her chin and prayed what she had. Near to the broken-hearted, Psalm 34-18. Great is thy faithfulness. Lam 3:23. As my days, so my strength do. 33-25. I don't ask for tomorrow. Just stay. Sleep came, not as escape, but as kindness.